Words changed the world overnight. Yes, you heard that right. In the 15th century, a German chap named Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press. This wasn't just some minor upgrade like a slightly better quill. No, this was the invention that basically hit the fast-forward button on human civilization. It revolutionized how information, ideas, and let's be honest, probably a lot of questionable gossip, spread across the globe. Before this magnificent machine came along, getting your hands on a book was, to put it mildly, a bit of a faff. Imagine wanting to read something, anything, and your only option was a book painstakingly copied by hand. Each letter, each word, each page meticulously drawn by a monk who was probably very tired and possibly quite grumpy. This meant books were incredibly rare, ridiculously expensive, and mostly owned by the super rich or the church. But then came Gutenberg, with his movable type and his clever press. Suddenly, you could print hundreds, even thousands of copies of a document in the time it took that poor monk to finish a single chapter. This wasn't just about making more books, it was about making information accessible. The world, it turns out, was thirsty for words, and Gutenberg had just turned on the fire hose. The impact was immediate and profound. Now, let's really paint a picture of what life was like for information before Gutenberg crashed the party. Imagine, if you will, a world without your Kindle, without Wikipedia, without even a dog-eared paperback. If you wanted to share an idea, a story, or heaven forbid, a scientific discovery, you had very few, very slow options. The main method? Handwriting. Yes, good old-fashioned penmanship, or rather quill and ink manship. This was a job for highly skilled scribes, often monks cloistered away in monasteries who spent their entire lives hunched over desks, copying text letter by painstaking letter. Think about the sheer effort involved. A single book, say the Bible, could take months, even years, for one scribe to copy. And because humans are, well, human, errors were inevitable. A sleepy scribe might misspell a word, skip a line, or even add their own little, shall we say, creative flourishes. This meant that no two handwritten copies were ever exactly identical. And the cost? Oh, the cost. Because of the immense labor involved, these handwritten books, or codices as they were often called, were luxury items. Only the wealthiest individuals, the nobility, or powerful institutions like the church could afford to commission or own them. So what was this miracle machine, this Gutenberg press, all about? It sounds terribly complicated, doesn't it? But the genius of it, like many great inventions, was in its relatively straightforward yet utterly revolutionary concept. Gutenberg, who had experience with metalwork from his time as a goldsmith, didn't invent printing from scratch. Woodblock printing had been around for ages, especially in Asia, but that involved carving an entire page onto a single block of wood. Gutenberg's big breakthrough was movable type. He created individual letters, tiny little pieces of metal, each with a raised character on it. These metal letters, types, could be arranged and rearranged to form words, sentences, and entire pages of text. Once a page was set, it could be locked into a frame, inked, and then pressed onto paper. And the best part? After printing, you could just break it all down and reuse the letters for the next page. The press itself was adapted from existing technologies like wine presses or paper presses. It used a large screw to apply even pressure, ensuring the ink transferred cleanly from the type to the paper. Gutenberg also had to perfect the right kind of ink oil based, so it would stick to the metal type. This wasn't just one invention, it was a system. Once Gutenberg's press got going, it was like someone had opened the floodgates. The numbers are genuinely staggering. Before the printing press in all of Europe, there were maybe around 30,000 books, total. And most of those were chained to desks in monasteries, which doesn't exactly scream easy access. These were rare treasures, hoarded and protected. Reading material was scarce, to say the least. Then, boom, Gutenberg's invention starts to spread. And by spread, I mean it went viral, 15th century style. Within just a few decades, printing presses were popping up in cities all across Europe. Italy, France, England, Spain, everyone wanted a piece of this newfangled word-making machine. And the output? It exploded. By the year 1500, so roughly 50 years after Gutenberg's Bible first rolled off the press, estimates suggest there were over 12 million printed books circulating. Let that sink in. From 30,000 to 12 million. That's not just growth, that's a literary supernova. The age of mass communication had truly begun, and it was loud, messy, and utterly transformative. Section 5. Suddenly, everyone's reading literacy goes boom. Now, you might be thinking, okay John, lots of books, fantastic, but what's the point if no one can actually read them? And that's a fair question, you astute observer, you. Before the printing press, literacy rates were, to put it mildly, abysmal. We're talking maybe 10% of the population in the 1400s, and that was heavily skewed towards the clergy and the nobility. For the average peasant or artisan, reading was about as useful as a chocolate teapot. There simply wasn't much for them to read, and no real incentive to learn. But the printing press changed that dynamic completely. Suddenly, books, pamphlets, and broadsides were becoming more affordable and more available. It wasn't an instant switch, of course. It's not like everyone woke up the day after the Gutenberg Bible was printed and demanded reading lessons. However, the sheer presence of printed material created a powerful new incentive. When there are interesting things to read, people are more likely to want to learn how to read them. It's basic supply and demand, but for words. The supply was suddenly there, and demand slowly but surely started to catch up. Section 6. Shaking things up, the press, a pope, and a Reformation. If there's one historical event that screams printing press was here, it's the Protestant Reformation. Seriously, it's hard to imagine Martin Luther's ideas taking off like they did without Gutenberg's invention giving them wings. Before the press, if you had a beef with, say, the Pope or the entire Catholic Church, good luck getting your message out. You could shout it from a rooftop, maybe write a strongly worded letter that a few people might see if a friendly scribe copied it. It was a slow, uphill battle. Then along comes Martin Luther in the early 16th century. He's got a few, shall we say, for the church, famously his 95 Theses. Instead of these just being discussed by a few theologians in Wittenberg, they were printed, and reprinted, and translated, and distributed far and wide, incredibly quickly. Suddenly, Luther's arguments against indulgences and his calls for reform weren't confined to academic circles. They were being read and debated in homes, in taverns across Germany and beyond. The printing press turned his theological dispute into a mass movement. It was the ultimate viral marketing campaign, 1500 style. The pen, or in this case the printing plate, truly became mightier than the sword. Section 7. Hello Renaissance. How printing breathed new life into old ideas and new ones. Now the Reformation wasn't the only massive European shindig that the printing press decided to crash, and frankly, make infinitely better. Let's talk about the Renaissance, that glorious period of rebirth in Europe, stretching roughly from the 14th to the 17th century, when art, science, philosophy, and culture went into overdrive. Think Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Copernicus, all those brilliant minds doing brilliant things. And guess what was humming away in the background, helping to fuel this incredible intellectual fire? That's right, our friend the printing press. Before print, many of the classical texts from ancient Greece and Rome, the very works that inspired so much of Renaissance humanism, were scattered, rare, and often incomplete. They existed in a few precious handwritten manuscripts, hidden away in monastic libraries or private collections. Scholars wanting to study Plato, Aristotle, or Cicero faced a monumental task just to get access to these texts. But the printing press changed all that. Suddenly, these ancient works could be accurately reproduced in large numbers, making them accessible to a much wider audience of scholars, students, and thinkers across Europe. This wasn't just about rediscovering old knowledge, it was about building upon it. With printed editions, scholars could compare different versions of texts, identify errors in previous manuscript copies, and produce more accurate, standardized editions. This facilitated a more rigorous and collaborative approach to scholarship. Section 8. More than just Bibles, building a brand new society, one page at a time. The printing press revolutionized society, touching commerce, law, education, and early democratic thought. It standardized languages, aiding communication and fostering nation-states. Governments could now efficiently distribute laws and official documents. This laid the groundwork for the modern world, one inked page at a time. Section 9. The unending echo. Gutenberg's ghost is probably on your smartphone. Centuries later, we tap on glowing rectangles, accessing a universe of information. Gutenberg's revolution continues. His principles of mass reproduction and accessibility underpin our digital age. The internet is a complex, instantaneous printing press. Social media, blogs, online news, all descendants of printed pamphlets. The power to share and challenge narratives has been amplified. Education evolves with online courses and digital libraries.